people coming in and out of the sector. Environmentally, I don't know if you would have seen overseas, they're all focused on environmental sets. So that we will be looking at soon as well. But we also want a sector that operates within a governance framework and a regulatory framework that enables it and that doesn't hinder it. So we want a sector that is agile and transparent, operating within an agile and transparent framework to facilitate growth. We also want a wide sector commitment to a shared vision of the future. I realize some of the comments that came this morning is because we don't have a shared vision. We don't have a shared vision. And we all actually are working in at various odds to each other. Whereas if we had a shared vision, we'd be able to better work together. And thank you, CEO, for the MOU that we now have so that we can work together. Thank you for that. So, if we want to reach this vision, we have to start thinking outside the box. Okay? I think Animation SA mentioned there's certain things in the production process that we leave until last, simply because that's the way it used to be done. The marketing, the merch, the licensing, bring those forward. Work through them in your development. You've got to start thinking outside the box. The gentleman who was at Cannes is talking about how busy these markets are. People are selling their content. But they're also selling commercially viable content. It has to be commercially viable. So all of that matters. It's not just about making my story and telling my story. I deal with channels who will tell me, I don't want to work with that particular writer because that writer is too precious about her story, and yet I am commissioning the work, all right? So sometimes when you do have that story that you really want to hang on to and that's so precious to you, then you should find other ways of funding that. Because if you're going to get a commission, you have to be prepared to shift a little. You have to be adaptable. Do you want to be a produced writer or not? You know? Or are you going to stick to every story you write and not budge? These are the kind of practical implications that will affect your work, that will affect the trade of your work. And these are the kind of things you need to think about. We want a future that transforms ideas, beliefs, and behaviors, that is easy to grasp, one that allows people to be original, that creates jobs and attracts new entrants to the workforce, that creates sustainable partnerships between government, private sector, and civil society. During COVID, in addition to our work with government, we had a deal with Netflix and Sony, and we managed to raise 15 million rand for relief funding, okay? That's the kind of agility. When we saw we could only get this far with government, we went knocking to the private sector. We said, SASFED is one person in the office. I'm not going to manage to pay 15 or however many people that we needed to pay. So we went and we partnered with a fund administrator. Agility. You know, thinking outside the box. That had never been done before, but we had never had COVID before. We had to quickly react and support the sector. Somebody mentioned earlier about infrastructure. So in thinking about this vision, we have to envision infrastructure. How do we reuse or repurpose existing infrastructure? We don't always have to start from scratch. You know, there are libraries in our communities. There are art centers in our communities. We've got a few ideas around this as well, and around localizing film production. Again, get plugged in with the sector organizations. Get plugged in. because then you'll be able to keep on top of it. What sort of an impact could a catalyst for growth like the KZNFilm Commission have? We want return on investment and the ability to include FDI. We want an institutional landscape to be amended so that it serves us, okay? And we want to think about new revenue models. We want to think about consumption and basically empowering even the person who is not based in the big cities. We want small business growth. We want all participants in the value chain to have direct income, okay, from the sector. The public spaces must be activated and utilized. Learning must be facilitated. You know, and then obviously an indirect impact would be tourism. The KZN tourism offering is enhanced. Income is generated in the hospitality and related sectors. The province becomes more attractive for investment, and community of life improves. And these are just building blocks that are already existing, that we need to think about how we're going to use them. Short film and documentaries for entertainment and education. We also want, please pay attention, we also want large-scale feature films with, you know, higher thresholds. And we do want audiences. We want to grow our audiences. We want to instill that appreciation of film in education. And obviously the training, I think, is something that is always ongoing. And then, how do we promote investment into the sector? We've got to sort out the DTI problem, the rebate. We've lost a lot of work, we've lost a lot of confidence globally because of what's been happening with the DTI. So that really has to be sorted. And we kind of need messaging that says we are open for business and we can be trusted. You know, we can be trusted for you to come and shoot here. So we do need to embark on a media campaign, not only for the overseas people, but also for the government people, the government departments who don't understand our sector. We need to be able to communicate the business case of the sector. This sector, while the value chain and the services are creative, what do you come out with at the end? It's partly a manufacturing sector, because we come out with a product that is exportable and that we can export. And not a lot of people understand that. So, you know, and we have a lot of institutions that are risk averse when it comes to the sector. These are the kind of things that we are challenging. And lastly, I've spoken a bit about some of the practices happening in the province. We've also had some complaints about fraudulent behaviors, etc., not necessarily in the province. I'm talking now generally. So we are partnering with the CIPC and their copyright infringement and enforcement wing, and partnerships are very big in what we do. And obviously, you know, there's the perception of crime that we still have to communicate, the perception of crime in South Africa. You must think like a foreigner if you want to attract investment. So these are the things we are in continual talks to the streamers about and to other potential investors. And obviously we need infrastructure that partners with law enforcement agencies to ensure security. I don't know if you remember the story of a music producer who was filming in Krugersdorp, and there was a rapes took place there. We need that kind of thing. Our filmmakers need to be free to be able to film, and we need to educate filmmakers about security on set. So you can see, we go from big picture and we try and do what we can in terms of the smaller picture as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause, more and more and more. That is Onati Malunga from South African Screen Federation. I have a little bit of a request to tweak my programming. I will allow Her Majesty the Queen to sit down. Thank you. And they will take questions immediately after the next two speakers. Give a huge warm welcome to our very own Dr. Ismail Mohammed from the Durban International Film Festival. Give him a huge welcome. We will take questions and open the floor after the next speaker, after Dr. Mohammed. You can give him another one just for oomph. Before my doctor starts, Dr. One, just give me 30 seconds. Immediately at 5 p.m., we have a shuttle service that will leave the ICC for everyone. Each and every one of us here will attend the honeymoon screening at the Suncoast Cinema. So straight from here, we are going to the premiere of The Honeymoon, and just give them a huge round of applause. Yep. Thank you so much, Doctor. You can go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, the Chairperson of the Board of the KZNFilm Commission, the CEO of the KZNFilm Commission, officials from the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, and all other protocol observed. Thank you very much for this Indaba. It's the first time since moving or relocating to Durban that I get an opportunity to engage with so many people since we've all come back into the live space. So it's energizing, inspiring, and just wonderfully enlightening to see the major challenges, but also the success stories that are told in this Indaba. The Durban International Film Festival is a 45-year-old festival which is presented by the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. In this presentation, I'm going to try to give you an overview of how we exist within the landscape of the university, but also within the sector, and then primarily in this particular province, and the role that we play in the film sector itself. So the Center for Creative Arts, as I mentioned, is a 25-year-old institution. Apart from the Durban International Film Festival, we also present the Time of the Writer Festival, which we just concluded last week, a 26-year-old film festival, the Jumba Contemporary Festival, which we present in in July, the Poetry Africa Festival in October, the Artfluence Human Rights Festival in May, the Jazz Freedom Festival next month, and then, of course, a Cabaret and Beyond Festival in October. Now, the reason I'm highlighting all these festivals is that apart from just presenting film at the Durban International Film Festival, we also create opportunity for film to be screened and showcased at all other festivals as well. And particularly for young emerging filmmakers, we create the opportunity through small micro budgets to be able to create film that works specifically with either dancers or choreographers to be presented at Jumba, to work with poets to be presented at the Poetry Africa Festival, and to be able to look at short films that work in the sector of human rights to be presented at the Artfluence Human Rights Festival. When COVID-19 pandemic hit us and the national lockdown was introduced, the Center for Creative Arts was the first South African festival to move into the online space. We were able to do that 2 days after President Ramaphosa had announced the national lockdown. Whilst we survived in that online space, our primary business is to meet in the physical or in context space. But there were wonderful learnings that we had from the online space, largely in terms of how we were able to extend our audiences, extend our partnerships across the borders. And when I say across the borders, I mean beyond Durban, but also beyond the borders of South Africa and beyond the continent as well. All our festivals have a large international footprint. We strongly located on the continent through our different festivals, but we also have partnerships that go across the other continents as well. Our festivals are aimed at advancing social change, and I'll talk about that as I go through that as well. So as I said, we are located within the university environment, and we are governed, or rather existence is governed by the Higher Education Act, although we function significantly within the cultural sector or within this particular industry for which we all gather today. So objectives in terms of the Higher Education Act, and it's expected from us as a university, is how does the festivals that we present contribute to teaching and learning, to research, and to community engagement. So I'll talk to some of those particular aspects, but I want to say that what we do is that we function largely in that third pillar, which is around community engagement. We do to some extent function around research, and I'll talk about one of the projects that we are working on, but we also work in teaching and learning, not so much in the formal space, although we work very, very closely with the Film Studies and the Digital Arts Department at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We work in the informal space with teaching and learning, largely through skills workshops or capacity building workshops or masterclasses or seminars that are presented during the Durban International Film Festival, but also through an internship program that we offer to young graduates. It's a one-year program where they based at our center and learn all the required skills that they need for festival management or being able to work in this particular sector. When I talk about community engagement, it's about how we take the university's relationship beyond the campus to organizations, institutions, government, and all other stakeholders that operate outside of the university but who have a dynamic relationship with us. So in terms of community engagement, our focus is around how can the festivals that we present contribute to capacity building. And that capacity building, as I mentioned, is through the range of programs that we offer, the skills set, the workshops, the exchange programs, the opportunity to be able to move from our festival to another festival, and so forth. We create job opportunities for new graduates. That's the one-year internship program, which is now into its third year of running. And that's a full day, every day attendance of interns from 9 to 5 for the full duration of the year. We play a significant part in creating opportunities for innovation at our festival, and in that particular regard, when we moved into the online space as the first South African festival to do so, the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences awarded us 2 nominations for both the Poetry Africa Festival and the Jumbo Festival. The Jumbo Festival won that, particularly for its use of film to advance screen dance. And screen dance is an increasingly large, growing phenomena across the globe. So it is an opportunity that exists for new and younger filmmakers to begin to explore. We were also awarded the Business Arts South Africa Award for our education and outreach and activism programs. We play a significant part in growing entrepreneurship through the skills workshops that we promote, but also through the kind of opportunities and the networking opportunities that we create. We focus very strongly around internationalization, which is a core function of the university, and we do this through various MOUs that we have with festivals across the globe or with partners that we work with even nationally in the country. We have partnerships that go right across. We have local partnerships with those with projects in Durban, with projects across the province, but also nationally and internationally, and I'll talk about some of them as I go through the slides. As a center that's focused around social change and social development, we ground ourselves on the values of the South African Constitution, and particularly around Section 16 of the South African Constitution, in that we advocate for freedom of expression and freedom of creativity, but we do that with the full understanding that those freedoms are not unlimited freedoms, that they do come along with responsibility and accountability, and that's what we expect from all the participants who work with us. We engage with a diverse array of partners that go from community-based organizations such as Luthuli Museum, KCAB, Vushwini Arts Center, the Panzi Museum, and a lot more, to foundations, the Obsidian Foundation in the UK. We work with foundations across South Africa as well. We work with various institutions. We've worked together with UJ. We've worked with Wits University, and we're broadening the relationships that we have with a number of other institutions in terms of co-presenting and co-creating work for our festivals. We work with local government, also provincial government and national government, but also with a range of diplomatic missions, which includes the British Council. We've worked with the US Embassy, the Canadian High Commission, the Embassy of Spain, the Embassy of Brazil. I could go through a whole list of them with whom we work, but that's essentially to create footpaths or trafficways for South African artists to network, to connect through those particular exchanges or those deliberations that we have with embassies, and to be able to take the relationships further. So essentially, we exist as an enabler, and that the relationships that artists who engage in our festivals and the skills that they acquire, we hope that they would be able to use that to be able to advance their careers. And that in being able to build the kind of partnerships, we work on a process of shared values, and our work strategy is either through co-creation, that is, we would jointly develop work for our festival, or we work through cooperation or co-curation, or anything that has the word co in it. We're prepared to explore. So why would we be at a center like the Center for Creative Arts at the university, and what kind of asset base do we bring? The asset base that we bring is a significantly large audience that can engage with the arts that we present across our different 7 festivals, which includes the Durban International Film Festival as well. And some of those audiences include academics who use the content in curriculum and further study or in research. We engage with students who have access to the work and who then use that as models for practice. We work with a number of alumni who graduate from our universities, having been exposed to these festivals, who then become supporters of the work that they've seen. We work with artists and festival guests, the university's festival audiences, which are diverse. And the reason I've pointed out all 7 festivals is that we're finding an increasingly larger number of audiences that are beginning to move from one genre to another genre. So whilst we develop audiences for dance, those dance audiences also come to film, because we now present screen dance as part of our dance festival. Likewise with poetry, we present short films at the Poetry Festival, and those poets then go over to watching film, and film audiences come over to the other side as well. We have a broad range of community partners, and then of course our local, national and international stakeholders. So before I move on to the next part, which is essentially our curatorial goals, I want to just provide levels of clarity, because very often there's a lack of understanding, because the festival happens at the same time, the Durban International Film Festival happens at the same time as the Durban Film Mart. Now those are 2 separate organizations, but we are sister organizations that serve a common purpose and a shared goal of developing the film industry in this province and in the country, and to be able to create opportunities. But we have a very specific target, in that the Durban Film Office, or the Durban Film Market, is essentially an industry-based platform where dialogue and conversation happens around the kind of economic opportunities, the investment opportunities, where co-productions are brokered, and any of the kind of things that are being discussed at this particular Indaba would be able to find itself filtering into the Durban Film Mart, the kind of industry-related questions. The Durban International Film Festival operates essentially as an exhibition platform that showcases the best film from the global community in Durban, and in doing so, we try to position the Durban International Film Festival as a flagship festival for this province and in the country that can contribute to cultural tourism, and thereby be able to benefit a larger value chain, which includes hospitality, youth employment, the catering sector, and of course the service providers that work for the Durban International Film Festival. So the curatorial goals that we work towards is that we try to find our programming that is relevant, that it must speak to the moment, and we're constantly evaluating that in the sense that we don't set themes 2 years in advance. We set themes and curatorial threads for each festival, having interrogated what our current status is in the country, what are the current dialogues that are happening, what are the current trends in the film sector that are taking place, and how do we program in accordance with that. A significant part of the Durban International Film Festival is to be able to celebrate excellence. And in regard to that, we run an incredibly prestigious award system, which provides at least 10 to 12 different awards in various categories, and those are all on our website. Each of those awards are accompanied with cash incentives, but also with opportunities to be able to take the films to a next level. We committed to nurturing innovative film voices in order to broaden viewpoints and to allow for critical discourse. So we're constantly looking out for films that are critically engaging, that there are narratives there that can force us to begin to rethink, reimagine, and to be able to reflect critically on the kind of country and the kind of democracy that we still need to build and strengthen in South Africa. The focus that we have around skills building is about opportunity generation. So our workshops are not just the kind of annual tick box workshop, but what is it that we can do with our skills programs so that we can see that the beneficiaries from our workshop program do find newer opportunities. And I can talk ad nauseum about some of our skills workshops which allowed participants to learn to write a funding proposal, to be able to learn to write a report, to be able to structure a script, or to be able to do the kind of things that allow them to be able to find economic opportunities in the sector. We deliberately committed to cultivating indigenous talent development by creating opportunities for training and skills development, and this is specifically through the isiZulu script writing program that we run, but also for other programs that are under the broad umbrella of what we call our Isipetu development program, and I'll talk about that in the next few slides as it comes along. We are committed towards audience development, and I just want to touch on that very briefly because initially I spoke, we were the first South African festival to move into the online space, and whilst that was great, we do understand that the cost of data in this country is incredibly exorbitant. And as much as we would love to retain the audiences that we build from Gauteng, the Western Cape, Limpopo and Mpumalanga and the other places for the online festivals, we believe that by presenting our festival in the live space, we would be able to move the agenda to bringing people to Durban and to KwaZulu-Natal, where their spend is left in this particular province. And that's the reason that we decided we've had enough of online festivals, 100%, but that we are going to be moving to a significantly live space because that would create a significant shift in economic spend and the beneficiaries of our festivals. We're also committed to audience development, both as economically paying patrons that can afford to pay for cinema, but also those that need to have access because they've been historically marginalized. And the latter service through our Diff on Tour programs, which we take out to at least 5 community arts centers in the broader eThekwini municipality. We're particularly committed to advancing social narratives, particularly of women, children, LGBTI communities, and other historically marginalized communities, and that is to be able to shift the dialogue that creates positive opportunities for them. A significant part of our program is around the presentation of African narratives, that is both from South Africa, the continent, and from Africans across the diaspora. We're committed to creating opportunities for women. The 10 interns that I spoke about are all 10 Black African women. A significant part of our program that more than, you can applaud, yeah. Thank you. I only saw women applauding. I haven't seen the men applauding. So we need to change some of our Sixes values as well. So we also focus around how we present more than 50% of content by women, that either they're actors, writers, directors, and so forth. So out of the 17 people that work in our office, that's interns plus full-time staff, we are only 3 men, the rest are women. We committed towards incentivizing excellence and towards developing canons of new knowledge all the time. The award system that we present at the Durban International Film Festival is based on global trends and global standards for film festivals. We constantly review that. In fact, we've just gone through a review of the award system that we have and how we plan to move forward with that, and that would be announced in our coming press releases in a short time. So how are we structured? There are essentially 2 layers to our festival. The first layer is the exhibition part, which is the festival that presents features, documentaries, and shorts to achieve its curatorial goals. And this is the exhibition or the cinema, the film festival that is presented, that brings film from across the globe and filmmakers, and creates an opportunity for audience growth, an opportunity to be able to expose to new cinema, and to be able to use the post-performance discussions at some of the screenings for generating some of the kind of objectives that I spoke about. The second part is the capacity building program, which is under our ICP2 program to serve the festival's development agenda. And as I said earlier, the difference between the Durban International Film Festival and the Durban Film Mart is that the Durban Film Mart caters to a large extent for the professional industry sector. So the ICP2 program caters significantly for those filmmakers who may not have had the opportunity of formal study, but who work in communities, who are emerging filmmakers, or who are essentially new graduates. And we're placing a significant emphasis on new graduates because we believe that a new South Africa has created greater opportunities for educational opportunity, and we need to play a significant part in combating the high rate of unemployment that exists for new graduates. So we shift the focus with our agenda in that particular regard. The main festival program consists of 25 features that are having their premiere in South Africa. They may have been presented at other festivals across the globe, but they are being presented at the Durban International Film Festival as South African and oftentimes African premieres. We present 15 documentaries, and we present 10 packages of 60 short films, and then we have a number of those films that are selected for the films that are in competition, that can be considered for the various awards that we present. So that essentially is the first part, which is the exhibition part of our festival. The second part is the ICP2 program, which, as I said, is aimed at young, emerging and community-based filmmakers, and is committed to development and the promotion of an industry-relevant program, and an industry-relevant program that is aimed at that specific target group, new emerging graduates or artists that have come through the pathways of community-based skills development programs, to be able to network, to connect with each other, to find opportunities for advancement, and to be able to catapult them into the next level where they become professionals. So the ICP2 program works through the following: that is, workshops, seminars, and masterclasses that take place during the festival, but we also run a series of those masterclasses or opportunities during the course of this year. For example, to mark South Africa's Human Rights Month, we have a program at the Center for on Friday, which is presented by the ICP2 program, together with our Artfluence Festival, which looks at 5 films for freedom. Next month, we, in partnership with the US Embassy, on the 3rd of April, we present a masterclass for filmmakers around entrepreneurship and photography and documentary photography, and in terms of how that could be packaged as promo or whatever. Screening of community venues, that is DIF on tour. We worked this for the last 2 years specifically with 5, and we've targeted those community arts centers, which is Vushwini, KCAB, the Lutuli Center, the Umgeni, in the Umgeni municipality, and the Dennis Hurley Center. We've decided to move away from parachuting in and out of community centers, but to be able to select 5 community centers every year, and every single one of our festivals will then have a on-tour program at that particular festival, so that we work in a constructive way to be able to bring content year-round to those particular community centers and to develop year-round relationships with those centers, rather than the kind of, we've ticked the box and we've done you, now we'll go to somebody else, which we know is non-productive and incredibly frustrating, particularly for the beneficiaries of those centers when they don't see a longer-term relationship. Last year, we introduced the International Isipetu Student Film Festival, and this is for filmmakers who are still at university or have just completed university in the year that the film festival is taking place. So if somebody graduated last year, they would still be able to submit their film for the International Student Film Festival that takes place this year. And I'll talk about a wonderful international opportunity that we have, which is going to be aligned to that. But we also provide from time to time small micro-budget grants for filmmakers to be able to produce work that can be showcased at our other film festivals. So whilst we have one micro-budget that we provide to the winner of the International Student Film Festival, apart from the award, that they get the award is one thing, but a small budget to be able to produce a micro-budget film allows them to be able to move to the next level. But we also do provide some of them, and last year we were able to give 3 of the filmmakers a micro-budget film to be able to produce a short work that we would feature at the Poetry Africa Festival. Our Emerging Arts Managers Program is the internship program which I discussed, where we've taken 12 young graduates who are engaged in a 12-month program. I'm saying 12 because we take 10 a year, but we've retained 2 from last year. So those 2 are on a second-year basis. We have 12 young graduates who are engaged this year on a 12-month program. They work across all aspects of the festival program to get practical industry-related experience in festival curation, planning, and execution and administration. So while they work on all film festivals, they're able to see what constitutes the architecture of a film festival, and we hope in that particular way we'd be able to contribute meaningfully to the generation and the development of new progressive arts managers that understand the dynamics of creating an environment and a landscape that can best benefit the arts sector. Before I get to the DIF partners, I just want to also mention the isiZulu script writing program, which I spoke about, which runs throughout the film festival, and for which I said we also provide a small micro-budget grant to one of the filmmakers that's been in the program. We are in discussion with the University of KwaZulu-Natal and its Center for Advanced Learning to be able to give some kind of recognition to the Isipetu isiZulu script writing program. So participants in that program next year wouldn't just be coming to a workshop, participate and then leave, but they would be able to get a greater incentive and then some level of recognition through the Center for Advanced Learning. And that's a long process that we're going, because we want to make sure that the content that we present there is moderated, it's structured, it's peer evaluated, and that it serves the industry in a significant way. And that apart from just being able to learn how to write in isiZulu, it also considers the politics of narrative, the sociology of narrative, and all those other aspects, so that we end up with strong film about this particular province. So who are our partners? The Durban International Film Festival has a range of partners. Some of those partnerships are for a 6-month period, others go for a year long, and others go for at least a 2-year or 3-year partnership. So some of them we've had is the San Francisco Black Filmmakers Association, and that was essentially to be able to create opportunities of learning and dialogue for us with Africans from the diaspora. We work with the Durban Film Mart. We're in the process of renewing our MOU. We have that as an annual MOU, and we're in the process of looking at whether we would go beyond a year on that, because we think it is necessary that cooperation is strengthened between the Durban International Film Festival and the Durban Film Mart, because we serve the same constituency in different ways, but they are shared values that we can have. We have a MOU with the Avalon Cinema, which is that Sunco Cinema, that we use as the primary venue for the screening of the festival. So this means what happens is that they provide us the venue at no cost, but we bring in audiences and we get a space and we get the kind of service infrastructure that does come along with being able to present an event of this particular scale. And that is incredibly valuable, because when you consider the number of screenings that you have, and if you were to be able to pay a venue for every screening, we would probably need 3 or 4 times the amount of money that we presently get from our funders. So that kind of in-kind partnership is incredibly valuable for us. We've worked with the Nelson Mandela Children's Festival, and that is largely to have presented programs created for child audiences on the Isipetu program, but also through the DIF program. We're currently working with Infinity Media through the Isipetu program to be able to render a skills training program for Black African women filmmakers, and that is currently taking place at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And then we work together with the University of Johannesburg, and this is again largely to break the silos in which universities work, but to be able to share skills, knowledge, and resources between our two institutions. We work with various international diplomatic missions and agencies and foundations to support visiting filmmakers for the covering of screening fees. So we don't spend a cent of money that we get from South African funders to pay for international filmmakers to come to the festival. If international filmmakers are selected to be at the festival, then we go to their embassies or institutions or foundations in their country to spend travel costs on them. So we ensure that all money, please applause, give it to us, yeah. So all money that we spend on travel during our festival is for South African filmmakers. We're incredibly grateful to our various international diplomatic missions that see the value of the festival not just as an opportunity for dialogue, but it's essential in terms of developing the cultural diplomacy and public diplomacy relationships that are required of our two governments as well, and how artists and filmmakers and those that work in our sector can become advocates for cultural diplomacy and public diplomacy. Apart from just the filmmakers, the international partners also pay for the screening fees of most of our filmmakers. So if we are going to get, for example, last year we had we had 2 films from Canada. The High Commission of Canada paid for the travel for the 2 filmmakers, but they also paid for the screening fees of those 2 films that were screened at the film festival, and those 2 Canadian filmmakers then participated in the skills sharing workshop that took place at the Isipetu program. Our funders, the Durban International Film Festival, as I said, mentioned grants both in cash and in kind from various partners. The KZNFilm Commission has been an incredible, loyal, and dedicated and committed and a passionate partner. When I say dedicated, loyal, and committed, passionate partner, it's not just a case of we write a proposal, they read the proposal, they give us a grant, we sign it, they give us money, we give them a report, and that's it. We put their logo there. But it's one based on shared values. We're constantly looking at what is the mission and the objective of the KZNFilm Commission as an entity that exists in this particular province, and how can our festival be a platform or a conduit to which their objectives can be serviced through the funding that they provide us. We work together with the NFVF, who also provide us the grant. The KZNDAC also provides us with the grant. And of course, people provide us grants in different layers and different levels and so forth. And then, of course, the University of KwaZulu-Natal significantly matches the grant that we receive from some of our funders. We also receive funding, as I mentioned, from embassies and, of course, the kind of in-kind partnerships that we receive from various people. And when we do receive in-kind partnerships, for example, the Avalon grant, we've been grateful to Business Arts South Africa for providing us with a matching grant or a support grant to be able to advance the kind of work that we do. In taking funding from our partners, all the money that we receive from our funders is pushed into the presentation of our festivals. What I mean by that is that no money from our funders goes into paying the salary of the staff, the water and lights, our photocopying, our operational expenses. All the operational expenses for the Centre for Creative Arts and the Durban International Film Festival is covered by the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And that includes legal and some of the other infrastructure that is needed in order to be able to run an enterprise as big as this year. And particularly because the Durban International Film Festival is also a registered trademark property of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So they do provide the kind of infrastructural support, and every cent that we receive from every single one of our festival partners is put into actual programming to benefit the sector and to benefit the artists and to benefit the kind of mission statement that we have in terms of skills generation or skills development. This is probably one of the most exciting developments for this year for us at the Durban International Film Festival. Just last week we got the news that we secured a catalytic research grant to be able to partner with a film festival in Brazil. You'll hear about that in the media in the coming days. We'll make the formal announcement about which African film festival in Brazil. But this would mean that we would be able to allow filmmakers from DIF to be able to travel to Brazil and filmmakers from Brazil to be able to travel to DIF. And to be able to showcase our absolute commitment towards new entrants in the film festival market or the film festival playground. Of the 10 filmmakers that we are going to be selecting, 5 of those filmmakers will be first-time new graduate or emerging filmmakers, and the other 5 will be professional filmmakers. So they would travel to Brazil, but their work would also be showcased at the film festival, and likewise we would have that happen in South Africa, and that would happen over a 2-month period. This also creates the opportunity for us to be able to work closer with the Performing Arts Department and the Film Studies Department at the University of KwaZulu-Natal to be able to research the models of festival presentation between our two countries so that we can learn from the best practices of our two festivals and to see how we could continue strengthening the pathways between our two festivals. We would be creating employment for a postgraduate film student for a period of 10 months to be able to manage this particular project for us, but to also be able to do this project in association with some of the other diff work that we do so that it doesn't end up as being a project on its own, and then when the 2-year period is over, all gets stored away in a file, but none of it gets integrated into diff. So it's going to be a collaborative project. We are going to be creating the position of an archivist. DIF has an enormous volume of work that's been presented over the years. If I just take this particular festival, the amount of content that's generated at the festival through either actual screenings or through the skills building program needs to be archived for research purposes or for learning or just for reference. So that, and then we would be adding 2 more interns to our battery of 12 interns. So we're constantly growing the kind of learnership opportunities that we create for young people. So where do we stand? Politically, we are positioned clearly on the values of the South African Constitution. So we would not allow hate speech, we would not allow racism, patriarchy. We contest those kind of things, and we do that in an open way, unafraid to deal with the difficult challenges and the conversations that we still need to have as South Africans to be able to build the kind of cohesive society that we require. We're committed to economic development and economic opportunity. And when I say economic opportunity, we recognize that our economy is still a fragile economy with lots of people who are still have-nots. So we work actively in terms of how we create the kind of opportunities through our festivals that allow people to have access to both work and to the kind of opportunity that comes with engaging in a festival. We have a strong social community engagement program that's filtered throughout all we do. I talk about the gender parity, I talk about some of the other things, but we also, for example, we follow the university's language policy, which means that throughout all our festivals, including the Durban International Film Festival, there's a strong focus on growing and developing the language of this province. So isiZulu features at all our festivals. With the Jumbo Festival, we've been able to make sure that all our promo goes out in both English and isiZulu, and we are working in that regard with building that as a strategy for all our other festivals as well. Technology, as I mentioned, we were the first festival in South Africa to go into the online space, and we've developed an enormous amount of resource, knowledge, and skill in that particular, and enough skill to be wise enough to go. We've had enough of online, we can now do things in the live space. Legal, we're incredibly lucky that we don't spend money on lawyers' fees and so forth, because we benefit from the university's rules, regulations, and their legal services and so forth. But it also means that we have a strong governance structure and a strong accountability structure, which is governed by the rules, regulations, the policies of the university, and of course the Higher Education Act as well. And then environment, we think we're an incredibly good location in Durban that can attract tourists and filmmakers to see the opportunities of working in the sector in the city and in this province. As a festival, through the various media outputs, and I'm talking of radio, television, and print press, we generate an average of about 26 million rands in publicity for the University of KwaZulu-Natal, our various festivals, and also the province and, of course, the country that benefits from the mileage that we put out. And all that inevitably translates to what our core objective is around how can the festival, as a showcase or a flagship of the city, of this province, contribute to growing film tourism and invest and the city and province as an investment destination. I talk of the figure of 26 million rands for DIF. In total, when we look at the overall publicity value that we generate for our 7 festivals, it comes to close to about 67 million rands. That's if I take all 7 film festivals, and that comes through our media tracking service. So, and in that figure, I don't include the publicity that we generate through social media. We work on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Nobody in the office is on YouTube. What's the other one? The video thing, I'm not sure what it's called. But we do have a YouTube channel. Facebook, we have for DIF alone, with all our festivals together, it's 65,975 active participants or followers on our Facebook. Instagram, 1634. Twitter, 23,465. So in total, we have 106,378 followers through our various social media programs that constantly engage with us, that help us to be able to raise the brand of the province, the products that we create, and hopefully in that particular way be able to translate all of that into actually coming to visit Durban and to engage with not just film, but with all the cultural offerings that our city can provide. The DIF team is not a very large team. We comprise of myself, who just signs on the dotted lines. Everyone else does the work. The DIF manager curates and programs and plans the entire program. The ECP2 projects officer is the curator of our learning skills development program. We work with a number of jury that we select for the shorts, features, docs, and student film festival. So we take an average of about 12 jury, and they all come from different parts of the global community, with at least every panel having one South African, and the others then come from other parts of the community, so that when films are assessed and the awards are presented to the participants at the film festival, we know that those awards have a stamp of approval that comes from a completely independent jury that is constituted from a global film industry. The interns, I think I've spoken enough about that. Because we received loads and loads of films for submissions to be presented at the film festival. We engage a number of pre-screeners that go through all the films, and we employ them for that short period, which this year was about 3 months, where they're viewing films, providing reviews, providing recommendations, and for which they also get paid. There are a number of service providers who benefit through the work opportunities that we create. And then, of course, we have a management team within the office that comprises of myself, a senior administrator, and a finance officer. And that essentially is the kind of team, but we depend to a large extent on the UKZN support in terms of legal and its other units that provide us with the kind of infrastructural support that we need. So that's our presentation from DIF. I hope you have a clearer understanding about DIF, and we welcome you to the festival and to engage with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed. A big round of applause as our doctor makes his way down. A few announcements, ladies and gentlemen. If your name is P.A. Mgati, please come with your official identification to the technical desk, which is here at production. Look at our hand here at the far left. You lost something very valuable from NetBank, and we have it. We need you to come with proof of identification. Just check your pockets or your wallet. You'll realize that we do have something of gold, which is yours. So thank you. Please come to technical desk. We'll also like to make this call. The KZNFilm has taken note of issues raised in the plenary, which is today. We are requesting that all issues raised be recorded in the Commission's breakaway session, which will happen after 2, which is after lunch today, so that they are tracked and ladies and gentlemen, this year's Simon Mabuno Sabela KZNFilm and Television Awards are celebrating its 10th year. Give them a huge round of applause. This year, the awards will take place on the 22nd of July. Call for entries will commence on the 27th or from the 27th of March until the 27th of April. I repeat, call for entries will commence from the 27th of March until the 27th of April. A huge round of applause for their 10th year. Ladies and gentlemen, give a huge warm welcome to Mr. Kevin Jones, talking about transformation in the film sector. He's going to be our last speaker for this interim or for this session, and then straight after that we will all go for lunch. A huge round of applause. Thank you.
You probably thought you got rid of me after yesterday. Just some feedback on some of the other presentations that were delivered this morning, and particularly the feedback that was presented by Unati on behalf of SASFED. I have to stress again, and I know I said this yesterday, but I want to say it again. It's absolutely critical that people get involved in finding solutions to the problems that our industry is experiencing. So I want to talk to you about transformation this morning, and I'm very aware, when the gentleman this morning from Economic Development and Tourism spoke about transformation and industry in South Africa, he described it as a kind of a Kilimanjaro moment, I think, or the Kilimanjaro effect. And for those of you that haven't recognized this, I know that I am a late model white man, and I sometimes consider it to be quite absurd that I'm talking to people about the process of transformation. But I've been involved in work with the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture for several years. They have a transformation forum. I'm the vice chair of that particular forum, and I am the vice chair not because I enjoy working with government. Anybody that's worked with government knows that this is quite a difficult challenge. I do it because I believe strongly that we need to create opportunities that empower the filmmakers that exist in this industry, and the only way to do so is to bring more people in and allow them to fulfill their potential. The point that was made by the gentleman from Economic Development was that the future is in your hands, and what I'm hoping you'll do is reach out and grasp the opportunity to drive change in the regulatory framework that exists in the marketplace. So I'm going to ask you just to make a note of this email address, eventstechproduction.sectorcode@dsac.gov.za, because in real terms there is a draft BEE code that relates to the audiovisual industry that you can access on the DSAC website, and in what they're asking people to do is to provide feedback to that draft code by email to this address. So, as I said, I'm the Vice Chair of the Transformation Forum within the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. I'm happy to take your feedback to the rest of our Transformation team. We had a meeting yesterday with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. We have another meeting scheduled for Tuesday next week. Things are moving very fast, and I'm happy to share your feedback, but you need to know that you can communicate directly with the task team as well. So just please make a note of that email address. Perhaps one of the things to do is to point out that over the last years, individuals from various organizations in the events and audiovisual sector have put aside their differences to work together in the development of an industry-specific BEE scorecard. Some of these organizations represent individuals, some represent organizations. Some of the people in our task group think that the transformation code goes too far. Some don't think that it goes far enough. Despite these differences, we've finally put aside our differences and we've agreed on a document that we feel comfortable sharing, and that's the document that's available on the department's website. Just to talk a little bit about who the members of the forum are. So the forum is chaired by Opar Salamani from the Music Promoters Association. You'll guess this is not just specific to audiovisual, it covers the broader events and entertainment industry. Pardon me. I'm the vice chair of the association. Other members, Gabby LaRue from the Trade Union for Musicians, TUMSA, is a new addition. Glenton de Kock from SACI, the South African Association for the Conference Industry. Sue Gannon from SEPA, the Council for Event Professionals. China Mpololo, also a member of SAMPA. Many of you in the room, I hope, will know Quinton Fredericks, co-chair of the Independent Producers Organisation and also co-chair of SASFED. If Unati's in the room, just shout out that that's still correct. And maybe she's not, didn't hear. Okay. Janet Landy from the International Festival and Events Association. Freddie Anyatella from SARA, the South African Roadies Association. And Leanne Alder from EXA. So one of the questions that you'll ask is, why is this dominated by representatives from the events industry? And the answer is that we started developing this particular BEE scorecard from the perspective of the events industry and then expanded it to include inputs from the audiovisual sector. Over the last year, we've had several meetings with industry stakeholders, including 2 presentations that were held at the Playhouse Theatre. In every instance, we've invited inputs, we've made changes to the draft, and we continue to work on building a document that will drive the process of transformation in the country. The current draft is far from perfect. For example, we've not addressed the issue of special purpose commercial vehicles, often used in the film and entertainment industry to manage risk and to ring-fence income and expenditure related to a particular audiovisual production. We've also not addressed the potential overlap with other published sector codes. There is a MAC sector code, Marketing, Advertising and Communications, that includes audiovisual companies producing content for marketing and advertising purposes, as well as experiential marketing companies that use events and functions to bring the product experience to consumers. And we haven't yet defined how we will consider whether a content producer will fall under the MAC Charter Code or the ETPSI Charter Code in instances where they produce entertainment plus promotional content. One of the questions I've been asked since we started this process and since we started the public engagements is why we, as the audiovisual sector, need an industry scorecard at all. And if we do need a scorecard, why do we need it now when the audiovisual industry has been decimated by the COVID pandemic? And the answer is provided by a quote from the previous Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, only out of the job for a week and now granted the distinction of being the previous minister. But back in 2014, fairly early in the life cycle of the forum, he described how one of the challenges facing the department is the disintegrated nature of what people do because they are from different genres. And he described how social cohesion and economic transformation sat at the heart of the Arts and Culture Ministry. He described how nation building and social cohesion would help redress the imbalances of the past and help us ensure that people who were historically excluded from the economy also now find a fair share of representation. These comments reinforce statements made by President Ramaphosa, who, in presenting the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan in April 2020, described how the COVID pandemic presented itself as an opportunity to reset the South African economy. It's an opportunity to build a new, inclusive economy that benefits all South Africans, he said. Transformation and black economic empowerment stand high on government's economic agenda. So we've done a lot of work during the COVID pandemic. And since the removal of the state of national disaster, we've been engaging in public engagements where we've spoken to people about our vision. You'll have heard several politicians talk about build back better, in bearing in mind the statements that have been made both by the President and the Minister. The choice is clear. We can either embrace the generic scorecards that exist at the moment, or we can develop our own industry-specific scorecard that serves our needs. And in exploring whether we should develop our own scorecard or we should use the generic scorecard, I'd suggest that the audiovisual sector is unique. We tend to have smaller companies with a low headcount of highly skilled and experienced people. We employ freelancers as our needs dictate. We scale up and ramp up the size of our organizations as we secure work or lose work. And so our revenues tend to fluctuate wildly because they are essentially project-based. The generic scorecard is a rudimentary tool because it's designed to be used across multiple industry sectors where the structure of the organization is stable, and that's fundamentally different to the structure that we find in both the events and the audiovisual industry. In August 2022, The National Film and Video Foundation released their 2021 economic assessment study that looked at the state of transformation in the audiovisual sector. They concluded that overall there are low levels of inclusion and slow transformation in the audiovisual industry. And this was particularly a challenge. Oh, go ahead, clap. It's a reality that we need to accept before we can bring about change. I think somebody behind us was laughing. They recognise that the audiovisual sector has made steady progress in the transformation front in terms of employment and management, but there's been limited progress on the ownership aspect within the audiovisual industry. And their report specifically highlights the lack of self-sufficient and sustainable black-owned film enterprises that exist in the market. It also describes how, beyond the public sector, black filmmakers and producers often find it very difficult to raise access or raise funding required to produce content and build a sustainable business. Based on that, pardon me, we've taken a long look at the core elements of the BEE scorecard and radically increased the transformation targets for ownership, management control, and skills development. And if you have a look at those three items that have a little red star next to them, you'll see that we've set targets that are between 70 and 80% higher for ownership, almost double the management control targets, and come close to doubling the skills development targets related to the transformation agenda, specifically for the audiovisual industry. So we've been very aggressive in the way that we have developed a strategic plan for driving the transformation agenda. We've also increased the number of points needed to achieve the various BEE levels. So whilst there are more points available in each of the categories, the targets are also raised. Now, these slides are difficult to comprehend without the full document in front of you. So as I said earlier, I would truly encourage you to go to the DSAC website, download the document, and then interrogate this information in relation to the more comprehensive document that's available. I'm just going to share a few examples of how the proposed scorecard deviates from the generic scorecard, and a good place to start is with ownership targets. In this instance, the target for exercising or for exercisable voting rights in an entity held by black people in the generic scorecard sits at 25% plus one voting share. And in our scorecard, we've increased that target to 40%. And our objective here is to increase the level of black ownership and to incentivize organizations to increase black participation in industry boards. We've also increased the targets for the economic interest in which black people are entitled. And again, we've increased it from 25% in the generic scorecard to 40% in the ETPSI scorecard. We've proposed a significant increase in the targets related to the economic interests of black persons in shared ownership schemes and cooperatives, raising the target, and this is, I spoke about, you hear people talk about radical economic transformation. We've proposed raising the target from 4% to 20% so that we can encourage black people to embrace the empowerment structures and encourage companies to sell shares in their organizations to their employees. We're looking for greater equity participation from staff and individuals working in surrounding communities. One of the big concerns that was raised in the NFVF research revolved around the failure of black employees to progress from low levels into middle management positions. And so we've proposed a target to address this bottleneck and create an opportunity for junior employees to progress in their career. This target doesn't exist in the generic scorecard, and it's introduced in response to the specific challenges that exist in the film and television industry. We've also doubled targets for supplier and enterprise development, encouraging companies not only to create employment opportunities for their own staff, but also encouraging them to create a black-owned supply chain that can feed into their business. And we've also increased the targets for skills development expenditure. At the moment, it's set at 3.5% in the generic scorecard. We've increased it to 5% in our scorecard. So, across the board, some very aggressive and radical targets. Concluding with this one, finally, we've increased targets for socio-economic development because we believe that the audiovisual industry in particular has the potential to offer employment opportunities and to feed into a much broader community. We often see the development of micro-enterprises that can contribute to the events and audiovisual sector with the production of local craft products or catering or other things that we can build upon. So we've tried to take a collaborative approach that takes into account other government initiatives. For example, I spoke yesterday about the professional designations that are registered with SACWA. We want to encourage people working in the film and events industry to earn a professional designation that recognises their skill, their knowledge and their competence. And we've allocated funding within the plan to allow people to acquire qualifications and professional designations within that structure. We're also aware that there are funding initiatives offered by DTIC. We want to ensure that our scorecard supports their transformation objectives, but also that their funding policies support our objectives, particularly relating to training and skills development and industry certification. We're aware for the events industry that the National Convention Bureau offers programs that provide financial support for events hosted in rural communities. And again, we want to ensure that the Convention Bureau's funding policies are aligned with this transformation agenda. Ideally, what we're looking for is for all organs of state to be aligned in the 5 pillars of transformation, so that by working together, we can fast-track black economic empowerment in our country and create an environment that brings economic prosperity to all. But this is not, what am I doing here? This is not an initiative that's easy to achieve. Whilst we've published the draft scorecard, it's definitely a work in progress that will be amended based on the feedback that we receive. So this is your opportunity to collaborate in the development of a scorecard that promotes a BEE agenda without throttling the economic recovery of the sector as we emerge from this COVID pandemic. We recognise that our sector has been devastated by the restrictions imposed upon us over the last 2 years, and we are aware that many companies in the sector have scaled down substantially to the point where many now exist only as a name on a letterhead or a sign on the outside of an empty building. In the events industry, more than 30% of our technical crew are now working in the Middle East, in Qatar, in the UAE, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. A technical crew working in the Middle East are working on interesting and groundbreaking projects that look great on a CV. They're earning a hard currency and they're earning in a tax-free environment, and we've no idea whether these people will ever return to South Africa. But we are aware that if we don't create commercial opportunities in our own country, not only will the people who've moved away stay away, the brain drain will continue, and our ability to produce first world content will evaporate. Training is an obvious part of the solution, But there's a shortage of young people entering the industry, and at a time when we need more competent people, less people are available. Sorry, where's my mouse gone? The film industry is in a similar situation. In the BFI Skills Review, the British Film Institute published a review in June last year, and they celebrated the British production boom, but they also pointed to a looming crisis, suggesting that a shortage of as many as 40,000 workers will have arisen by 2025, with shooting schedules already affected. So that's a shortage of 40,000 people in the film industry in Great Britain. In part, that shortage is being addressed by a call for additional training and skills development. But the British film industry is actively recruiting South African crew. And again, the question is whether those crew members working in the UK will return to South Africa. And if the commercial opportunities remain greater in the UK than they do in South Africa, will the brain drain continue? Our sector is facing real economic challenges, and we desperately need to focus on reviving the sector in order to create a sustainable future. At the same time, we need to address historic inequality and create opportunity for black people. We need to promote training and skills development as a tool for economic recovery. We need to accelerate transformation at higher skills levels by creating structured career paths that allow people to elevate themselves as they move from one level of management expertise to the next. We need to encourage cooperation and collaboration between established and emerging black-owned businesses. We need to create opportunities for black-owned businesses to access the funding and the capex that they need to drive business development. This isn't just a tick box exercise in which we're paying lip service to the principles of public participation. This scorecard will impact everybody in our sector. So whether you're a supporter of broad-based black economic empowerment or not is completely irrelevant. This is upon us whether we like it or not. You can either participate in the development of a bespoke scorecard that serves the interests of our industry sector, or you can live with a generic scorecard that's imposed upon us without any consideration for the structure and culture of the audiovisual industry. The choice is yours. And I want to say to you, grab the opportunity to drive the change and create a regulatory document that will allow everybody working in the audiovisual sector to thrive. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, Mr. Kevin Jones. Please give him a huge round of applause. He may be seated, sir. Thank you, so we can continue with the next session.
Are we going to do the questions for all three?
We'll do it afterwards, sir.
Afterwards, thank you.
We have a little bit of discomfort from the chefs, yes, because you guys are hungry, apparently. You're tired of hearing each other's stomachs, so let's attend to it. Thank you so much. Let's do it this way. Now it's 4 minutes after 1. That's what my clock says. I hope yours is saying the same. At 25 to 2, we need to be back here. 30-minute max. Please go ahead and enjoy your lunch. Please, 30-minute max. We still have the NVF to also speak to us. Please, 30 minutes max. Enjoy. Thank you.